What is the role of startups in digitization of Indian agriculture? So how digital agriculture is being turbocharged by agtech startups, for the lack of a better word. So this is what the topic that I chose. So this is what we will kind of deep dive, and I'll share my perspectives, my thoughts as we go along. As you know, it's a well-known fact that Indian agriculture faces a myriad of challenges, right? So not one, but many challenges. If you superimpose climate change on top of it, it becomes all the more complex, all the more difficult. My fundamental belief that I've held for the last 3-4 decades is that agriculture continues to be the most riskiest enterprise that is on planet Earth. More so Indian agriculture, because of the various structural issues, right? When I say structural issues, what do I mean? Things, for example, the land, the size of holdings. 90% of our farmers are smallholders. That is, they hold 2 acres, 1 acre, or less than that. Number two, another example of structural inefficiencies in Indian agriculture. For example, we know that agriculture is a state subject, right? So you have the concurrent list and the state list. So ultimately, whatever policies the central government can frame and all the funds that it can provide, implementation has to happen at the state level. In fact, implementation of agri policies has to happen at the Gram Panchayat level. It has to happen at the village level. Other examples of structural issues are over-dependence on monsoon. I remember the famous Dr. legendary MS Swaminathan had remarked in the 60s that Indian agriculture is a gamble with monsoon. It still is. Now, because of climate change, it has gotten all the more complex. What I mean by climate change, very simply put, you have small spells of large amount of rainfall that is happening, and then you go without rainfall for a large period of interval. So you have uncertainty in rainfall, for example. So that's one clear manifestation that we are into this era of climate change, and it's going to become far more worse. And the frequency of such uncertain events is going to become more certain. It may sound oxymoron, but the only thing that is certain today in today's day and age is uncertainty. And this is playing havoc with Indian agriculture. So therefore, I believe it's my firm conviction that I have a twofold conviction. One is that digitization by startups, these two words are very critical. Digitization, which is applying Industry 4.0 into agriculture, then it becomes agriculture 4.0. Now we are in the 5.0 era. Embracing all the digital technologies, which is IoT, machine learning, data science, digital twins, drones, satellite imagery, etc., etc. This is digitization, right? And the second firm conviction is startups, the agtech startups, right? I believe that digitization of agriculture is a solution to the structural moonshot problems of Indian agriculture, which has been plaguing us for the last, 8-10 decades now. I believe that the digitization of Indian agriculture via startups is essential for transforming agri ecosystem of India. And I'll tell you why, and I'll give a lot of examples, data points, and use cases, and real-world examples as we go along. So why this topic, right? So of course, I was given a list of 7 to 8 topics. I chose this. So why should we spend the next 45 minutes or so talking, discussing, and sharing perspective on this particular topic? That is how digitization of Indian agriculture is being enabled by agri-tech startups. So what is the motivation? What is the reason? So there are multiple reasons. I have kind of listed a few of those. The first is that in today's day and age, despite all the problems that we face in India, the agtech segment, which is the agriculture, the application of technology in agriculture. When you say technology, it's all the digital technology, data science, satellite imagery, drone, IoT, etc., etc. This is a sunshine sector, right? It's sunshine sector because it has only started to take off in the last 10 to 15 years, 1.5 to 2 decades at the most. And the good news is that this particular segment, which is the agtech startup segment, is kind of solving real problems of our farmers. It is not solving some artificial problems. So I'll distinguish what is real and artificial. We have many startups in India today. If you look at some estimates, latest estimates numbers, we have close to 2,300 to 2,500 agtech startups all over India. Of course, some of the agtech startups born every day, some of them die every day, every week. So, but give or take, there are 2,300 to 2,500 agri-tech startups all over India. But the downside to this is that most of the agri-tech startups are not solving a real problem. So what do you mean when I say they're not solving a real problem? Most of the agtech startups, I would say 70-80% of them are trying to kind of become an aggregator. When I say an aggregator, they're not adding any real value. They are creating one more layer, maybe in lending, for example, ag fintech. We have a subsegment called as fintech, which are lenders. So they are adding 2-3 percentage points more in terms of cost of capital that they get from NBFCs. NBFCs in turn get it from PS, public sector banks. Public sector bank in turn gets it from NABARD, so on and so forth. Or when you take another example, market access and market linkage, right? So we know that there are a lot of middlemen in Indian agriculture, right? When it comes to selling, marketing the produce or the cultivation, there are a lot of middlemen. So some startups they add one more layer. So that means, in essence, they are not solving a real problem. So the good news is that the remaining 20% or so, that's almost 400 to 500 startups are solving real problems. That means they're doing real problems. And therein lies the promise that agtech startups can transform Indian agriculture by adopting and embracing digital technologies by small farmers. And of course, it's all driven by technology and data. When I say technology, it is data, it is internet, it is IoT, it is satellite imagery, it is all of this put together, and data. Everything is driven by data. Yeah. The second reason why we should study today's topic is, all said and done, travel, but you cannot stay away without food, right? You need 2 or 3 meals per day. Not only food, look at agriculture. Agriculture provides food, fodder, fuel, fiber, and also medicines, right? So therefore, there's no substitute for most of this. At the end of the day, humans have to eat to live. Therefore, there are issues like food safety and sustainability, which are kind of embedded in food. So that as long as humans will feel hungry, agriculture and agtech startups are there to stay. And needless to mention, despite all the India becoming the fifth largest economy with $5.1 trillion dollars of GDP, agriculture continues to be the spinal cord or the backbone of Indian economy. Why? Because India has 6.5 lakh villages. How many tier 1, tier 2, tier 3? We have few hundreds of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities, but India lives in its villages. More than 60% of the population directly, indirectly depends on agriculture for employment, income, etc., etc. The application of new digital technologies is also creating meaningful pathways for innovative investments in agriculture. One of the pain points in agriculture has been that investment in agriculture is less than 0.5% of our agriculture GDP into agriculture research, for example, R&D, for example. So one way to kind of overcome this is to get private investment, right? So most of all of the agri-tech startups are by nature private entities. So if you look at the numbers from 2014 to 2020, agri-tech startups in India, they attracted almost $1.5 billion. In the last 3 years, from 2020 to 2023, we already crossed that number. So these are serious, numbers in terms of investment, and all this is eventually going to pay off in the sense that once small farmers start adopting this technology, they started to actually, but once this adoption is at scale, then you can look at the real impact and the magnitude impact. Finally, the agtech sector, is opening up the portals in terms of support by the government of India, especially the central government, for example, is creating, as we speak, they're creating something called as an agri-stack, a data stack, while all the public sector data collected from the state government, central government over many, many years and decades, everything is being put on a single repository, and the agri data stack is being kind of designed and evolved as we speak. This, for example, besides other initiatives, Government of India has a lot of initiatives that is that has been provided in the last 2-3 budgets. If you look at the last 2-3 budgets, including this year's and last year was the agri-drone budget, for example, and a slew of measures were announced for agri-tech startups. This year, the budget by the Union Finance Minister also mentioned 500 crores of outlay to help agri-tech startups. Like this, there's a slew of measures, right, that the government of India has kind of unleashed. And all this should happen through the PPP format, the public-private non-for-profit framework, for the simple reason that agriculture is far too complex and agriculture is far too big for one entity, one state government, one central government, and few large companies to solve. No, any company, big, large, or small, the only way you can create impact at scale is by collaboration in a PPP framework. So these are the reasons why we should kind of do a deep dive and delve into today's session. So before getting into today's sessions, I have some hypothesis. So what is the fundamental topic? The fundamental topic is how agri-tech startups are transforming digitization of Indian agriculture. So I'm a firm believer, I have very strong belief and conviction for the last decade or so that I've been working very closely with the agri-tech ecosystem, mentoring around 35 to 50 startups as we speak and investing in quite a few of them. I believe that startups in general have the power, have a game-changing power. They have a transformative power, and more so agri-tech startups. So let's see why is that. Now, startups by definition solve a real problem. Startups by definition are bootstrapped. Startups by definition are hungry. Startups by definition are passionate about what they want to do and what problem solution they have to offer. So they are having a game-changing transformative power. They also solve a real problem, not a superficial aggregating. It's not Amazonification or creating another Uber or Ola in agriculture. We don't need that kind of solutions now, right? Maybe it was relevant 7-10 years back when the first few agri-tech startups made the move. But in today's day and age, we need startups which will solve a real problem. For example, can we solve soil moisture problem? Can we solve optimization of fertilizers, whether bio or inorganic or organic? Can we forecast prices more accurately and help farmers discover the price? So these are real problems, right? Now I can go on. There's a long list of problems. In fact, in agriculture, sky's the limit. There are hundreds of problems. There are hundreds of commodities. There are hundreds of districts. I always say that one commodity, one district, you solve a real problem. You have a unicorn then and there. And most of the startups, are innovation driven. If not, they are very unique. They are most of the time innovative, right? So that's the key. And by nature, by default, startups are driven. They have a purpose, they have a meaning, and they're energetic. Most of the startups are by folks, by people who are in the 20 to 30 age group, most of them. So they're very energetic. They work, 7 days a week, 20 hours a day, and they solve the problem. And more importantly, ag-food tech startups can bring in the era of Agri 5.0, which is what we are getting into now. And they can also bring in a lot of efficiency. One of the biggest problem, that Indian agriculture, if you look at it from a holistic macroeconomic perspective, we are number one, right? When it comes to production of a lot of pulses, cereals, even dairy products, we are number one, absolute numbers, million metric tons. But when it comes to productivity or efficiency, which is yield per acre or yield per cow, for example, for milk, or yield per acre of pulses, spices, cereals, we are not even in the top 10. So that means that there's a lot of inefficiency in what we are doing, right? Because of all the structural issues that I highlighted earlier. So agri-tech startups by default are geared up to address these inefficiencies and bring in efficiencies. Agri-tech startups also can address the moonshot predicaments. Moonshot predicaments are nothing but structural problems, which I told: size of holding, policy, legal issues, lack of access to information, etc., etc. All these issues can be easily solved through technology. And finally, agri-tech startups can kind of put agribusiness on steroids. They can turbocharge them and put them on steroids while balancing all the sustainable development goals. The good thing about technology, which is data, the confluence of data and IoT, etc., satellite imagery, is that if you design it properly and do it thoughtfully, you can also make sure that the planet Earth is taken care of, ecology and environmental concerns are maintained. At the same time, it is affordable and accessible. At the same time, it's green and clean in nature. So this is why this topic is so very relevant, and I think it's extremely topical. And this is the hypothesis. This is a set of hypotheses I have for today's session. And with this, we will get started. We'll just spend the next 30 seconds on how Indian agriculture is digitized, right? Compared to 70s and 80s, or in the last 1.5 to 2 decades, or how digitization has evolved in Indian agriculture. So by definition, it means collecting data. It starts with data, right? Data is the lifeblood of digital technologies, whether it's IoT, satellite imagery, drone. It's all about capturing data. Data could be in form of images, it could be numbers, it could be text, it could be all of that put together. So it's data collection, it's data processing, which is very critical. How do you process data? How do you feature engineer? How do you store, capture? How do you eliminate extreme values? This is all data processing. And then essentially you have to make the process more the entire framework more process dependent and less people dependent. So whenever humans are involved, inefficiencies will creep in automatically. The best farmer will have a bad day in the office. So that's the reason that you want to make the process as data driven as possible, so that it's more accurate, it is cheaper, faster, and better. Yeah. And therefore the entire the agriculture industry becomes more reliable, more efficient, and it's also connected to the global market. In today's, again, if you look at the geopolitical dynamics that has taken place in the last 2-3 years, the pandemic and the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, India today, everybody is looking up to India as the next global food basket of the world. Yeah, why not? We have been exporting commodities for ages, right? Spices from the last 200 years, 300 years, or much further. But clearly, if you look at the numbers, last year, India exported $50 billion of agri exports. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. If we get our act together, if the startups are able to do what they're supposed to do, and the state and the center are able to encourage and promote the startups, and startups come up with affordable, accessible technological solutions, 50 billion is we're just scratching the surface. We can go up to $500 billion also. Yeah. So I'll give 3 examples. There are many examples of digitization. 3 most powerful. The one is smart farming, right? We call it different names and jargons. I'll just demystify. Smart farming is using data essentially to solve and improve efficiency at the farm. It could be using sensors, it could be using water conservation technologies, it could be optimizing fertilizers, it could be predicting when to harvest, etc., etc. So smart farming, right, mostly driven by IoT. IoT is nothing but Internet of Things. So today sensors have become very affordable. There are few cents. It's become extremely, you can put sensors in the soil, you can put sensors up there to measure the weather parameters, you can measure soil moisture, you can do everything with sensors. You can embed sensors in farm machinery, etc., etc. And AI, of course, AI is artificial intelligence, which is nothing but converting data into information into insights. AI is also known as machine learning and data science. While there are some distinct differences, but for today's session, I think we can use it interchangeably. Artificial intelligence, data science, statistical modeling, machine learning means everything the same thing: collecting the data, processing the data, and then pushing those recommendation insights which are implemented that make a impact either to the bottom line or to the top line. Either the cost of cultivation comes down, or at the same time productivity and yield goes up. Actually, both can happen if you design it and implement it well. It yields. So therefore, we are fundamentally addressing the efficiency issue where India is having a huge gap. The second good example of digitization is smart irrigation, right? You can sit in your home, use your mobile phone. Today, there's one mobile phone. If not the farmer, somebody in his family would have. India is having more than 700 mobile phones. Most of them are smartphones. So you can control using a iPad or even a simple smartphone, not a feature phone. You can control how much to irrigate, when to irrigate, etc., etc. So smart irrigation, right? So it's all based on sensors, and of course, water scarcity is going to become one of the biggest issues. So we conserve water, we save water, and we provide the right quantum of, we are optimizing water use for the crop. So there's one the theme also that the central government is aggressively pursuing these days, called as more crop per drop, more crop per drop. So that's the mantra. That's possible through smart irrigation, through sensor-led irrigation, yeah, and simple mobile technology. Finally, we all know drones, right? So drones have multiple use cases. It's not only spraying. You can, of course, do spraying, save a lot of water, a lot of pesticides, etc., and time, cost. But also drones can be used to assess soil moisture. Drones can be used to assess the crop health. Drones can be used to predict the onset of pests and diseases. Drones can be used to forecast potential yields. It can do everything, right? You should only know what kind of drones, what kind of cameras, etc., hyperspectral lidar cameras, etc., yeah, to collect precise crop data. Now, moving on to the startup ecosystem in India, I told you there are close to 2,500 agri-tech startups. The number keeps changing because startups are born every day, they die every day, literally. So let's look at it. Good news is India is having a thriving agri-tech ecosystem, right? If you look at this particular year, 2023, the first half, January to June, in the investment community, we said that the funding winter has set in. Things are getting very tight. But the good news is funding for agri-tech startups has not, relatively speaking, has been robust compared to all other startups. Like it could be, electric vehicles, it could be e-commerce, it could be edutech, it could be health tech, it could be SaaS. Those sectors have seen a distinct downturn in funding, but agri-tech startups have been robust. That's the good news, right? So therefore, like I told, even the central government and many state governments are having a host of initiatives, a lot of policy measures to promote and encourage agri-tech startups. And I'll just share some of those initiatives as we go ahead. So they're creating, so one such, I'll give 3 examples. The one is Startup India initiative, right? Under Startup India initiative, you can register, become a DIIP, you can get that recognition, and then you can get a lot of tax shops, etc. So funding, tax rebates, etc. Then we have the Atal Innovation Mission, right? And the Atal Incubation Centers. Most of the state agriculture, there are 70 plus odd agriculture universities and non-agriculture universities too throughout the length and breadth of our country. Most of them have Atal Innovation Incubation Centers where they get funding for 5 years, typically anywhere between 3 to 5 crores. And they are supposed to work with startups, provide them with domain expertise, provide them with infrastructure, and scale the startups. Yeah. And finally, we have Bharat Agri FinTech Challenge. Like this, there are many. These are the major ones. This is for one subsegment of agri-tech, which is the FinTech. So they can kind of showcase their solutions on a platform and get a grand prize and go away with it. Now, in my mind, it's very clear that agri-tech startups are clearly, they are in fact best suited to kind of put digital agriculture in India on steroids. How? In one of 3 ways. The first way is, by way of domain expertise. One thing we should be very, very careful is that there are many people, engineers, who are not connected with agriculture. They're all welcome, right? But what they lack is domain expertise. In any startup, the domain, here when I say domain expertise, we're talking about agronomists, entomologists, pathologists, water technologists, agriculture marketing expert, for example, agriculture finance expert. So domain expertise is very critical. Yeah. And that's where, having good domain expertise coupled with business smarts and financial acumen will make the startup successful. The second important factor is being abreast with the latest technologies. We talked about Industry 4.0 technologies. Today, we are in the age and era where the rate of obsoleteness is kind of maddening, right? Every 15, 20 days, you have new tools, new technologies in AI and ML. That's the rate at which technology is progressing, right? So therefore, one has to adopt the latest technologies, be it IoT, be it satellite imagery, be it machine learning models, whatever it is, one has to use the latest. Now today, in today's day and age, everything is on the cloud, right? So that's what it is. And finally, innovation. Startups have to innovate. You cannot, though the Indian agriculture market is vast and wide and deep, there's room for multiple players. But I think unless you come up with innovative solutions which are affordable and accessible, I underline in bold, the startup cannot make impact at scale. Yeah. So let's look at some of the players, how they're transforming the agriculture by digitization across the entire spectrum of value chain, from farm to fork, from seed to plate, from cultivation to consumption, whatever jargon you want to use, across value chain you can use. Only thing is you need good data and convert data to information and insights. I'll give some examples. Some agri-tech startup players are looking at market linkages. They're on the demand side. Once the crop is harvested, from that stage, from the farm gate stage till the time it reaches the consumer, like you and me, wholesaling, retailing, transporting, post-harvest processing, all of that. So some startups are focusing on the market linkage aspect. Few others are focusing on precision agriculture. How to, for example, smart farming, for example, precision irrigation, for example, using drone to assess the crop health. These are all precision technology, using satellite imagery to figure out the crop health, so on and so forth. Yeah. So this also, if you do, it's clearly, if you look at precision and smart farming, yields can go up to 30%, right? So by using less, you're getting more. Yeah. Quality management and traceability. Today's day and age, consumers, domestic as well as the international export market, consumers are willing to pay a premium as long as they can track and trace from where they are getting the produce. Which farmer? Suppose I'm buying mangoes from Amazon. There's a QR code on the box. I just scan it. It tells me this particular farmer in this taluk, in this block, in this village has cultivated this farm, this particular mango. And he has used these ingredients for pest control and for fertilization. So traceability and tracking, this is blockchain, right? So blockchain is one of the digital technologies. Some players are also focusing on the supply chain. Supply chain is from pre-sowing to sowing the crop till harvesting, yeah, on the supply side. So you want to make sure that you get high quality, yield, and also better quantity, both quality and quantity. If you follow the agronomic package of practices, smart farming in a precise way, scientifically, you can get a good control in the supply chain. Yeah. And you eliminate in the process all the inefficiencies and wastage. There's a lot of wastage on the farm, off the farm. So even if you are able to plug those leakages and wastages, that itself is a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's a win-win for the farmers and consumers, producers as well as consumers both. Finally, there are financial services players. Farmers, small farmers, 90% of our, 400 odd million farmers, they are hungry for credit. They need credit to buy seeds. They need credit to buy fertilizers. They need credit to buy farm equipments, lease equipments, and conduct the agronomic operation. So it's clearly that even if you can tap at 30% of the 400 million farm families, it's almost 120 million. That's a large number. So, and also crop insurance, right? So most of the farmers are not aware of crop insurance from the center and also from private players. Therefore, it's a question of creating awareness and coming with products which are bespoke, sachet, affordable, and accessible. So all the agri-tech startups are bucketed into 6 buckets, large buckets. You can do it into 10, 12, however you want. This is the way I have done it. So on the marketing side, you have the aggregators, market linkage players, storing, logistics, processing, etc. And then you have immediately after the crop is harvested, storing, cleaning, grading, and packing. Farm production, right? Agronomic advisory services, precision farming, drone, etc., etc. Input supply, coming up with fertilizers, biofertilizers, biochar, for example, nano fertilizers, all of this input supplies, seeds, high quality seeds, research and development, R&D, coming up with innovative tools and techniques and products and services. This is a snapshot of all the startups. This is not an exhaustive list. This is just an indicative list. I put it into 6 buckets. You can see, and this is how the latest India's agri-tech ecosystem, this is how it looks like. All are good players, major players. Some of them will go on and become, hopefully, unicorns. My guess is we'll have, in the next 2-3 years, at least 5 unicorns. Already 2 are on their way to become the unicorns. So look at the pain points on the left-hand side. This is a table that I took from Deloitte. Deloitte says that agri-tech startups can kind of impact $24 to $25 billion. That's the size of the agri-tech startup market ecosystem. These are all the different pain points that most of the agri-tech startups are trying to address. I will not read. It could be on input side. It could be on technology for improving efficiency. It could be post-harvest. It could be financial, insurance solutions, etc., etc. All of this results, and each of this has been, this $24 billion, $25 billion has been broken down into Of course, clearly on the food processing, post-harvest processing is where the big chunk lies, followed by credit, and then access to different technologies like drone, drip irrigation, farm equipment, mechanization, etc., etc. Some use cases and real-world examples. I'll give three. First one is Krishi Hub. Most of you would have heard it. What they do, they give real-time updates on agronomic advisory, weather forecasts, etc., so that farmers are able to take scientific decisions and intervene at the right time so that they produce more with less. And next is Fussel. Fussel is an IoT company. What they have a device. They have sensors which will help you to monitor the weather forecast at a micro level, at the farm level, and also help you to give push recommendations for agronomic package of practices and when to intervene, when to fertigate, when to irrigate, etc., when to harvest, etc. Third one is a company called IoT Research Labs. Of course, they are using a lot of sensors and using machine learning AI algorithms at the back, using generative AI chatbots in vernacular languages so that farmers on their WhatsApp can get push recommendations about weather, about plant growth parameters, these potential disease conditions, etc. Some more successful examples, right? There are hundreds of them. I'm just taking few that one must know. So Dehat, Dehat has created a fully integrated model, right, from supply chain to market access. Yeah. They have started from Bihar, they have moved now to Uttar Pradesh, they have come all the way to Jharkhand and Madhya Pradesh, and they're growing. In fact, now they have their own brand of cereals and pulses and commodities that they are selling on Amazon. So they are into their full spectrum. They are trying to own their entire ecosystem across the value chain. Ninja Card started off with a B2C focus, but quickly in 2017 they realized the folly and then they pivoted the model, became a B2B e-commerce player. Their main proposition solution is fresh produce supply chain optimization. So it's not easy to deal with fruits and vegetables as perishables. You're playing with fire, but Ninja Cart is one of those companies which is doing successfully. They're trying to reduce waste and get efficiency in terms of market access to farmers, especially perishables, fruits and vegetables mostly. Then there's Big Hat. Big Hat also is an agtech startups. It has more than 50,000 farmers with them as the base. They're providing everything right from quality inputs to seeds, and also helping with leasing of equipments, etc., and helping farmers produce more, better quality and better quantity. Now, what is the impact of startups on Indian agriculture? So startups are, clearly they bring the latest technology, which what the state governments and central governments cannot, because startups are very nimble, they are hungry, they're passionate, so they also are able to come up with solutions which will improve farmers' livelihood. So better livelihoods, overall livelihood is not only a monetary aspect, it is using less resources, it is being ecologically sensitive, at the same time improving productivity without using too much of resources. So that's all. It's about improving the yield at the end of the day. If you improve the yield, income naturally increases, even if you take the prices as being constant. Operational efficiency. In India, one of the biggest problems going forward will be the scarcity of labor. You will not get labor even if you pay money going forward in the next 3 to 5 years. That being the case, how do you, operation efficiency can be ensured through drones, for example, right? One drone will spray with 10% of the water and 30% less chemicals, whether organic or inorganic. It covers 1 acre in few minutes, right? As opposed to human intervention. So operation efficiency through automation and mechanization that is in a way that is kind of customized and suitable to Indian agriculture and smallholders. The good news is smallholders can all pull together. They can form an FPO, FPC, a collective, a cooperative, and then lease this equipment. They don't have to buy the equipments. And finally, credit, right? Improved access to credit. Today, it's all about digital lending, eKYC. You don't have to wait for days and weeks together to get credit. So there are startups which adjudicate whether to lend or not within few minutes now. Yeah, in Bangalore, in Hyderabad, etc. So startups are lent to the farmers directly, or also they lend to groups like FPOs and FPCs and SHGs. So credit is the main thing: affordable, accessible credit, and timely credit, all based on satellite imagery data and other external, secondary, primary data that is already there in the system. So let's look at some of the promising future startups, how it is going to impact Indian agriculture, what problems they're going to solve. One is getting innovative farming techniques. So it's not that techniques also, farming techniques by and large have remained the same in the last 4 to 5 decades. But if you look at now, let's take rice. Rice is a very a staple commodity, one of the rice and wheat. Let's look at rice. Now we have the concept of DSR, direct seeded rice. So you don't have to transplant. You're saving almost 70-80% of water, and direct seeded rice gives same better yield, if not the same, compared to traditional methods of farming. Like this, there are a lot of agronomic interventions that are there in the lab, in the public sector, ICR, SAU labs, but they don't reach the farmers. So that's what it is. Integrated supply chain management. So we all know that supply chain is fragmented and broken because of various reasons, logistical reasons, because of lack of data availability. Now, internet is almost ubiquitous. Data is the cheapest in the world, where in India. So therefore, using data and internet, you can do price discovery. Producers can be directly connected to consumers, or B2B2C or B2C directly, whatever the way you want to. That way you can also food loss and wastage itself, 30 to 40%. That itself is billions of dollars. If any agri-tech startups only focuses on quality assessment of perishables, for example, and then how do you reduce the loss during transit and storage, that itself is a multi-billion-dollar opportunity. Finally, how do you use algorithms and statistics, AI and machine learning, right, to predict the onset of diseases, to optimize the crop yield, to predict prices? All of this can be done if you have good data at micro level. So smart farming, to conclude, what is the call to action? Call to action is as follows. Digitization of Indian agriculture by agri-tech startups can not only provide sustainable solutions to farmers, but they can create enormous economic impact plus social benefit. Therefore, this is triple bottom line, right? Therefore, time is now. It's not tomorrow or today. It's now. It is the right time for entrepreneurs to take a plunge and do that agri-tech startup, and for investors to pump in the required capital and encourage and support agri-tech startup entrepreneurs, so that the Indian agriculture sector can thrive and India can become the provider to the world for all commodities. The only way we can do this is through collaboration in a PPP framework and through the adoption of latest digital technologies. With this, I will stop, pause, take a break, and see if there are any questions to be answered. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your so much insightful and thought-provoking lecture. I think it will definitely help our participants in a way so that they can change their perspective and shift their perspective toward these agri startups, so that we can achieve maximum with what we have got right now, which is the need of the hour. There are some questions from the chat box that I would like to ask.
Yeah.
Allow, sir. There is a question that in what ways do startups leverage technology to address the challenges faced by farmers, such as access to information, markets, and other resources? Can I repeat, sir?
Yeah. So, yeah.
In what ways?
Yeah. Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah. Yes, please. In what ways do startups leverage technology to address the challenges faced by farmers, such as access to information and other resources?
Sure. Okay. So, like I give a lot of real world examples. There's one company, let's take satellite imagery. The best way to understand is by taking a real world example. We know satellite imagery. Satellite imagery has become very affordable and accessible. Now satellites, European satellites, they go around every 3 to 5 days. You get data every 3 to 5 days. And the resolution of images is in few meters now. That means maybe a small portion of 1 acre of land also can be, the image resolution is as precise as that. So using satellite imagery, there are a lot of companies which are using satellite imagery to assess soil health, to predict crop forecast and yields, to also predict the outbreak of pests and diseases. Examples, there's a company called Satyukt Analytics. Another company called a Sat Sure. Like this, there are quite a few companies. If you take one example of satellite imagery, how they're using satellite imagery to solve problems of pests and diseases, optimizing the use of irrigation, fertilizers, and also predicting the yield so that the farmer can plan when to harvest and when to sell. Like this, I gave another example. I gave numerous examples, right? Examples of smart irrigation, right? Using IoT. I gave the example of Fussel. Fussel started with one crop, pomegranate. Then they went to grapes. Now they're looking at various other plantation crops where they have sensors embedded in the soil, and also they have a device that they kind of install in the farm to predict when you should irrigate, to predict when to apply fertilizers, how much to apply, and take the necessary proactive intervention measures so that the quality of the output as well as the quantity both improves dramatically. Like this, I can go on and on.
Thank you, sir. There is, however, another question. The
Mhm.
question is, sir, what obstacles or barriers do startups encounter when trying to implement digital solutions in agricultural sector, and how can they overcome it?
Right. Now, this is a billion-dollar question, right? So, there are a lot of hurdles that startups face. See, one of the biggest hurdle is the adoption by farmers. Farmers don't easily change, right? They have been farming for centuries. You go to a farmer, his father, his grandfather, everybody is into farming. So, for them to adopt technology, it has to have the solution should have two important characteristics, like I highlighted during my talk. One, it should be affordable, it should be accessible. Affordability and accessibility. Only when the technological solution is affordable and accessible, then there will be adoption at a large scale adoption. To create that, you have to also work on bringing in awareness among farmers, right? For example, technology should be in local vernacular language. India is actually it's a continent, a country of so many diverse languages, etc., etc. So the agri-tech startups need capital, for example. And the biggest thing is, how do you create awareness among farmers so that they will adopt the technology and experience the benefits? For this, it is to be affordable and accessible, and also be in vernacular language.
Okay, sir, thank you so much. There is another question in the chat box. How do startups ensure that their digital innovations are user-friendly and accessible to farmers with varying level of technological literacy?
Right. The only way you can ensure that is by having domain experts on the team in agri-tech startups. Or the other alternative, the ideal way is to have the domain experts. If not, the agri-tech startup entrepreneurs should spend time in the village, 6 months, 9 months, at least 2 crop cycles, be with the farmer, stay in the village, understand the problem firsthand, not sit in a air conditioned room in a city like Bangalore, Mumbai, Delhi, or wherever, right? Or Calcutta. So unless you experience the pain points personally, or you have a domain expert who knows the subject matter scientifically, these are the only ways in which you can ensure that the solution that the agri-tech startups are offering are practical, pragmatic, and make sense to the farmer.
There is another question, sir. How are startups helping farmers assess real-time market information, price trends, and demand forecast to make informed decisions?
Right. Yeah, this is a good one. So, because one of the biggest pain point is farmers will cultivate, but they need good price for their produce. Now, most of the time they have to go to the nearest market, APMC, and sell. So, in today's day and age, most of the APMCs, they publish on a daily basis, if not much more near real time, at least not real time, real near time, on a daily basis for the commodities that have been notified in the APMC. The state APMC is a state subject. Each state government in the APMC, they publish the prices on a weekly or daily basis, and this is available on their website. Today, if you have a mobile phone, anybody can access that, right, anywhere. You just need to have mobile connectivity. And there are many agri-tech startups which have come into this space, which are providing price forecasts also, and also trying to hook up the data that APMCs are in, and major markets outside of APMC also, they are trying to feed those. There are quite a there are at least 7-8 such startups which are in this space, but mostly the prices are kind of for the notified commodities. The agriculture produce marketing committees publish this on a daily or weekly basis, and they all publish on their website, so anybody can go and access the price. Today, a farmer in a remote village can know what's happening in the nearest city or town, or even a farmer in Maharashtra can know what is the price of the commodity of, say, onion in Bengal, or a tomato farmer in Karnataka can easily know what's the price of tomato in Mumbai market, urban market. So all he needs to do is go to those websites and find out. And there are some private companies and startups also providing these services for a small fee, very affordable small fee. So this is the way you can discover prices and know what is the price of the commodity. There are some specialized entities which are trying to forecast the prices, saying, okay, what would be the price for the particular commodities, say for tomatoes next season, say next March. There are players who are coming into this and also doing some good work, but mostly most of that is done in public sector domain, especially students doing their PhD from agriculture universities. They do a lot of such work as well.